Okay. We would like to call the work session to order, and Evan Pratt has requested that we reverse the order of the work session agenda items with the Washtenaw Regional Resource Management Authority going first. Asset management will be second, and the reason is they're paying the attorney by the hour, correct?
And the word, so. And the word. Go ahead. Whatever they tell you, they're ready anyways.
It looks like it's on. Yes, we're good. All right. Well, good evening. Thanks for having us here. My name is Theo Egermont. I'm the Public Works Manager at Washtenaw County. We're excited to be presenting to you about the regional authority that we'll be launching over the course of the next couple of months. I also have Evan Pratt, Water Resources Commissioner, and our attorney, Bob Davis, who has helped us form this authority over the better course of last year. So he'll also be up to explain some of his experience working with an authority that's much further along in its progression in southern Oakland County. So I'll tell you about the authority. I want to give you a little bit about the history, where this came from, discuss a little bit about the vision, what the benefits are, and generally talk about the authority. So first, the history. This grew out of the county holding some stakeholder meetings to discuss what kind of issues they were having with recycling. Out of that process, one of the primary recommendations that came out of it was to form an authority. It's a tool that can be used to address the issues that stakeholders were saying they had in their communities with recycling. About 8 members of the community continued to say, we want action on this, we want to form an authority. The county has hosted those meetings over about 8 months to formulate what that authority would look like. Do we have enough in common to form an authority with a common vision? The vision that the authority came up with through the stakeholders, including Brenda, was to focus on increasing the quantity and quality of recycling. We want to clean up our stream, and we want to have more of it. Additionally, as time progresses, we want to have local processing. We want to move towards zero waste, but that's much more in the future. We want to really focus on recycling initially. And there's a lot of advantages to forming authority in order to do that. First of all, you have economies of scale. Everyone's sending this to multiple places. If we can all send it to the same place, and we can collaborate to form, the first thing we want to do is focus on education. If everyone's doing this separately, it costs more. So if we all pool our money, we can get education that's cheaper, and we can do it more efficiently. We can also send the same message to our community members. Recycling can be tough. If we're sending different messages, because we don't always recycle the same thing depending on where you're at. So if we all have a consistent and clear message to our community members who are part of this authority, which will be the better 2/3 of the county population, we can have a clear, consistent message that reaches everybody. You can move from population X to Y and still have the same things that you're recycling in your community. Additionally, people mentioned they wanted to have more regional collaboration. This is one great opportunity to do that. You have increased negotiating power. If we have 2/3 of the county population that are part of this authority, we could work with haulers, we could work with processors, we can work with end markets to get a better deal for our residents. And then one of the things that community members or stakeholders discuss is they want to have the opportunity to collaboratively haul, and that could be waste or recycling. By pooling our contracts down the road, this is 5 years down the road, say, we have that increased buying power. We also can optimize routes. So if we're not having a truck turn around once it hits our municipal border, we can optimize those routes. We can save greenhouse gases. We can save wear and tear on our roads. We can have a more efficient process. So that's an opt-in process that will be down the road. And then Lastly, I want to express that I've communicated with neighboring counties, neighboring municipalities, looking to inform them about what this authority is and what it's about. The process that we're taking, the 8 communities who've been a part of this are the ones who have had input. They're the ones who have created the articles of incorporation. So they're the ones who will sign and form the initial authority. The neighbors are aware of what's going on. I'm continuing to inform them of what progress we're making. And then over time, if it makes sense for them, they could join. That will require an amendment to the Articles of Incorporation. And so that'll come back to this legislative body to see if they're willing to accept other communities into this process. The reason why we're doing that is because this process took a long time. We have the inputs of the member communities who have their values, their vision as part of this Articles of Incorporation. We don't want to have to start over by having another new vision be a part of that process. So we're setting the initial authority to match the member communities who are part of it, and then expanding to see if other communities want to be part of that vision down the road. With that, I'll turn it over to Attorney Bob Davis to tell you about his experience.
The attorney's.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. We've had a lot of meetings about this.
Could you just give your name for the record?
Oh, yes.
The person who does the minutes, they are not in the room. So it helps if you give your
Gotcha.
name.
My name is Robert Davis,
Very good.
and I'm from Macomb County, although in 1959, as my mother raced across US 12 because the hospital was full in Garden City, I was born here in Ypsilanti. So I'm glad to be back. You have been very well represented in the meetings with respect to the article drafting. I've also had a great opportunity to speak to your attorney in a session where we reviewed some of the legal issues associated with this process. So I've had the opportunity since the year 2001 to work with an authority of different size and different composition in Oakland County, but organized under the same legal principles that we're starting here. So this is interesting for me to see the infancy of an authority, whereas I've had the opportunity to represent a very matured authority that is about 75 square miles that ranges from the community of Birmingham down through the Hazel Park and Huntington Woods area, 12 communities that banded together long ago and have now advanced through the years with all forms of waste collection, hauling, disposal, yard waste, and recyclables. After I was their attorney for about 10 years, we restructured the bid process to create a bid process based on geographic areas as opposed to community boundaries. And when we did that and got rid of the division lines among the communities and went with the bulk geographic area, we got bids and our rates went down from about 22 to 28% per community based on that process alone. Likewise, in the last couple of years, I've restructured their recycling program and did a bond and built a single-stream, state-of-the-art MRF facility in the Troy transfer station area. And we rolled out large carts for recycling, and we have 1 year under our belt now, and we've had a 26% increase in our recycling, which we think is very noteworthy, and it seems to be on the uptick going forward. I wish there was a linear relationship between increasing recycling and reducing trash. There is a correlation. It's just not a one-for-one. So anyways, we spent a lot of time using that backdrop of experience, and we came together as a group, and we had a law that allows this many things to be done. And as we sat there with input, valuable input from all the communities, we began to see that we were more narrow in our objectives at this point. In other words, I thought it was very smart that we began to narrow our thinking. Although the law allows a whole bunch of things, we were going to have a little bit of a focus as we started this potential authority, the focus being on recyclables and recycling management, recycling messaging, recycling consistency, and trying to build a recyclable group of communities wherein the recyclables are rising in terms of their quality and rising in terms of their quantity, with the idea that we believe in 2 to 3, maybe 4 years, when the good market returns to the value of the recycled materials, that we would be in a position where we held a reputation of being a good block of recyclables, a good group for contractors, and that we could attract a good program to manage the recyclables in our authority boundaries. We also have discussed the idea of having the need for maybe potential discrete drop-off centers for materials that would also benefit the residents. We do that in Oakland County. We keep certain drop-off centers open 12 months a year for dropping off of defined materials. So as we continued with the process, we ended up with a series of articles of incorporation that, in my opinion, do some unique things beyond what the law requires. We spent a lot of time, as Brenda could attest to, just defining what would be the things the authority would do, and maybe it took us longer to figure out what the authority would not do. And I want to be upfront about what the authority will not do under these articles, and that would be the authority will not own or purchase property that will be used or had been used in the past for the actual disposal of waste materials. And disposal being the legal term, disposal meaning disposal, not transferred, not managed, not a material recycling facility. I'm talking about we're not going to own a landfill. We're not going to own a disposal facility. We're not going to own one that was, and we're not going to own one that might be. That is not in the vision of the group. I know for sure was not in the vision of Brenda during our meetings. So that's expressly now stated in the articles. That is not going to happen. Aside from the legal things that had to go into these articles, we also took time to include, we made the voting structure very simple. It's 7 words or 8 words. It's got its own article, and it says every member shall have 1 vote. And we toyed with that language, believe it or not, for quite a while. And
What page are you?
you know, I think page 7, article
Okay.
10. We ended up with that voting structure. Many of these authorities vote according to size, population, weight of materials, all kinds of formulas. Until further review of these articles, which could only be amended by returning to every legislative body for approval, 1 member, 1 vote. And so this community would appoint someone to be the representative to the authority board and would act on this community's behalf and be able to cast 1 vote on each issue that is presented to the authority at its meetings. We also inserted an annual budget process whereby the authority board would prepare a budget, and that budget would come back for your review so you could see what the budget would be looking like for the next year for the authority. Combined with that, we would have an activity report that would come back to you for review. At some point, I would hope one of you would say, how's the authority doing? What have we accomplished? And I would love for the report to be back to you that says the authority is doing very well. Our recycling is up 20%. Our messaging is getting to the folks, and everybody seems to be happy, and things are going very well. And I'd love for that to be the report that you get. We also have an annual audit process. We have a process to address insufficient income, and we have a method for other members to join this organization after it is formed. Any changes to these articles, I want to stress, has to come back for the unanimous approval of each legislative body who is then a member of the authority. So nothing can slip by, nothing can happen without this legislative body having some involvement in the process. So that's the way we have structured the articles to date. The milestones we have in front of us are this, is we have to get one set of articles approved by all the bodies who might want to be in this authority. And so, it's kind of a daunting task because you want to make sure that you've aired out the issues in advance so that you don't get 6 meetings into the approval process and then there's going to be a comma change and we're going to go back to the other 6 before we complete the process. So that's why we're here, and to see what your questions and concerns might be at this juncture as opposed to being here when we have a final product. I've learned over the years in my other group where to start with that process and where to end with that process. So I always start with Birmingham because I know if I wait till Birmingham is at the end, they will indeed have a change. So I get that out of the way first, and then I work my way down south along Woodward. So we're here, and we could address any of your questions.
Before we start, what other communities have you presented to?
Oh, yeah, we have been to, Theo, help me out, because last night we were in Saline. We've done the city of Ypsilanti. We've done Ann Arbor Township, Scioto, and Pittsfield.
And Dexter's brought it forth for information.
Right.
Okay.
Dexter City, to clarify.
I think that's important information.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, all the meetings have gone pretty well.
So are there questions?
Madam Chair.
Clerk Rowe?
So what other communities do you still have to go to? Are we the 8th one?
Yes.
I missed one then. Saline, Ypsi, Ann Arbor Township, Scioto, Pittsfield, and
Do we say Ann Arbor Township?
Dexter.
Dexter.
I missed Dexter. Tuesday.
Is that your only question? Joe Rowe?
I just wanted a clarification. So I read the insufficient income piece. Or I'm sorry, going back up, there's the annual budget process, and then if anything's greater than the $5,000, it'll be like distributed equitably among the constituent members. And then so, like, if I'm reading this contract, I pause there and then skip down to the insufficient income? Or is that a totally separate thing?
Well, what we
Like-
tried, what we,
What page are you on?
I think she's generally on page 10.
Yeah, Article 20 and Article 14. Takes a second to read.
We really, the way we've set it up, there shouldn't be a situation where there's insufficient income. That's why we backed up and put in the budget process. Our concern, though, was if we had a situation where, we had budgeted to do some sort of educational promotional material. And for whatever reason, it just came out more than we thought, and now we don't have the income we thought we had to pay for that. We wanted to have something that would address insufficient income, so we divided the insufficient income provision into 2 categories. Was the insufficient income related to something that was pre-approved, and it just went over, or not? and then there would be different ways to address it. Generally, if it was something everybody approved, we would just go back and prorate it.
Split it up.
But we wanted to reserve the right to have some creativity in that process, and I can just maybe give you a hypothetical example. There might be a situation, and we did raise this with the city of Ann Arbor, where we were doing some sort of promotional material, and we were going to get that material out to each citizen. Then I think the city of Ann Arbor is going to have more mailings on that issue than Ann Arbor Township. And so when we went back, we wanted to have some language at the end of that paragraph that said, in another equitable manner unanimously approved by the legislative bodies of the constituent members. So I would be back here before you saying, here's what happened, here's how we plan to make up that income.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Good question. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Trustee Rosswing?
I just had a couple questions. Number one, I just wanted to confirm, is each member community is going to be contributing $5,000 to the fund? Is that correct or no? Or did I read it wrong?
An initial contribution to get the authority off and running. And the reason that I bring, what's his, Evan Pratt, the reason I bring him is because he's going to contribute $5,000 for everybody who contributes $5,000. So I keep him very close by.
Yep, I read that also, and the county would contribute $5,000 for each
Right.
community.
And they've committed to help out for what could be a couple years of us getting on our feet. As you know, there's another recycling authority in Washtenaw County that's been around for 25, 30 years. So they've already have a facility, and they're further down the chain. So Commissioner has been very helpful for us.
Thank you. And then my second question, I know we're talking about, with solid waste, you have solid waste, you have recycling. And I could have sworn I read something in regards to economy of scale, maybe when it comes to possible bidding as it relates to solid waste and recycling. So just wanted to confirm that, number one. And then number two, what if a member community wanted to go on their own outside of that bidding process? Would they be allowed to do so?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and that was the subject of lots of conversation, is if any one community sees the authority going in a direction they're not comfortable with, the legislative body, before that commitment is made, can exit, maybe not exit the authority in total, but exit that particular issue. The economy of scale, quite frankly, is pretty powerful. When I started working with the SACRA organization in Oakland County, they did sort of a hybrid of individual bidding by community, and then they tried to pool it together. And when we took a look at that, and we were going out for the first 10-year real major contract, it made more sense to me to bid it as a whole. And it wasn't hard to get phone calls from a lot of folks when I had that amount of rooftops as a potential contract, as opposed to little independent contracts. And took a lot of criticism on that strategy, because everyone thought that it was just a plan to get the big haulers into play in Oakland County and let them dominate the waste business. So as it turns out, if you start at Birmingham and grab a few communities with Birmingham, the company that has that contract for everything is a company called Car Trucking. Have you heard of Car Trucking? Great, because nobody had when I hired them. And then if you go further down and you pick up Troy and its attendant communities, I have a company called Tringali Sanitation. I hope you haven't heard of them. And then further down, there's some other contractors. But the point is that the bid process as a group attracted a lot of attention. and the service has been wise. One of the things we did about 8 years into that process was we switched, because we had enough staff within the authority organization, we switched the daily calls to the authority as opposed to the local DPWs. That made a lot of people happy in the local governments.
Clerk Rowe, did you have another comment?
My question was on the, so the stuff, the money from the county is going to be like a match for each community that's in.
Yes.
That is, okay. Understood that right. Thank you.
I just want to make a couple comments, and we did have a lot of meetings, and Stan actually attended one as well. Eldridge? Yeah.
Yes.
He attended one.
One meeting, right?
The one with the lunch.
We did have pretty good lunches.
You did?
Right.
And one of the, I don't know if you guys recall the discussion that we had last year, but they changed the rules where you could have a 0.5% contamination rate. And if you, this is our waste hauler, and it happened across all the waste haulers. So if you had a container and it had a 0.5% of something in it that contaminated it, it contaminated the entire load. So we
Not
were,
just in the container, the whole load.
it was the whole load.
Right, right.
And so we were starting to get bills from our waste management, and I'm like, what is this for? So that's one thing that happened that was very different, where education is important, the same ordinances too, you know? And then something else is China stopped receiving our plastics.
Correct.
So we have to figure a way to get our resources from recycling, you know, reused or someplace to store, because right now there was no market for it.
Right.
So we were paying again because we used to get paid if there was a market. Well,
Right.
now there's no market for it. And so all of these things came together in 2018, which is one reason why we started this regional type authority. Ann Arbor, I believe they're going to Ohio to take the recycling. Is that correct?
I think you are correct.
Yeah.
A
And then,
long road haul.
yeah, and we're going to Huron Township, so
Right.
it
They-
just made sense that we tried to figure out, you know, because we want to recycle. Of course, we want to do that. But if, to each individual community is making it harder and harder to do that. So the purpose is to have a regional that you could potentially have a recycle center somewhere.
Absolutely.
So we're not driving all over and out of state. And then secondly, bid it out jointly. So, you know, when you come to the city of Ypsilanti, you don't pull the brakes and, you know, stop picking up.
Right.
And the same is true with Pittsfield Township and Ann Arbor and all the other communities. So I support doing it. This is a large step forward. From a legal perspective, it's like creating an authority, like Yucca. We're a member of AAATA, you know.
Right.
So that's two authorities that come, library, district library when we first started. So as long as our attorney has had the opportunity, and I know you spent time with him, so we're protected liability financially and.
We will get him a final document pointing out anything that has had to change subtly with respect to all these meetings. But you know, just that little point that you make about the, excuse me, the influx of the contamination into the recyclable materials. We're talking about that because I think generally we all understand that is an issue. That is not a commonly known thing, that there is a, quote, quality of recyclables in the marketplace. The contractors know about it. People who are up on recycling know about it. But getting that message out that it's not just the quantity of what you put in that recycle, it's the quality.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, I've heard some stories of, you know, people who wash their stuff before they recycle it. I mean, I understand, but just that point you raised, I don't think folks know that. I don't think it's common knowledge that there's a quality recyclable, so I'm done now, right? Is that,
Right.
that you raised that point, that, you know, and this little percentage of contamination can take the entire, not just that container, but the whole truckload.
yeah.
Now, you know what the contractor is saying, quite frankly? Excellent.
Well, it's actually the recycling center that's saying that. It's
Yeah.
not as much as the contractor.
Yeah,
That's who's doing it, and until we started getting those bills, I had no idea.
yeah,
Because it was a lower standard. It was.
right.
So it's,
But just that
all of
side-
these things coming together has caused a lot of financial
And-
unintended consequences that no one could have projected.
And let's just fast forward and then I'll sit down. Regionally, what the goal is this. Let's say you appoint your rep and the authority's off and running. We want to sit, we want to meet, we want to look at, where is your current recycling contract at? Where is SIO? Where is our, how can we get them to be in sync? I'm already working with several of the communities to get their contractors to agree to out clauses. I've already accomplished it in several communities where the recycling portion of their contract can be years' notice done, even though the balance of their contract continues. So we're already working on that. Then in 4 years, I hope when the market is back with us, somebody looks at this group and says, there's a group who has quality and quantity, and we want to go there and give them a good price. That's the goal.
I hope we also come up with products that can reuse the recycled material.
so.
I mean, that's
As
something.
far as the China issue goes, I'm hoping that the State of the Union tonight will address that.
Like, you see things on Facebook, not that it's all
I don't know if he's going to
real,
talk about
but-
recycling, but
But
you never know.
Yeah, you never know. But it looks cool, all right, to
Right.
just see some of the things that they've done with plastic bottles,
It's-
to bind it
it's
together. and
fantastic.
Floating houses.
And what we did over in Oakland County, and you know, goofy or not, but we actually spent a lot of extra money at the new MRF to put in this room with windows. And we do, it's a pretty big field trip, going to be a big field trip center. So people can go and see, and at the end, we have some products. You say, okay, so this pile, and the kids all want to just see the pile. They love the big pile. And then you get to watch it sort, and then there is something at the end. Say, this is what it could be reborn as. It's kind of impacting. It's kind of nice. So, anyways, great group. Can I answer anything else?
Any other questions
Mr.
or
Winters?
comments? Okay.
How are you?
Good. We had a good meeting, I guess, back in December, and myself, you, and Evan. And the only direction I would ask for the board is, I had emphasized to Bob and to Evan that we had a very, very successful compost yard here in the township. We've invested an awful lot of money in our compost center, and we've hired new people to enhance the operation. We've put a lot of money into our equipment and into into the equipment and all the machinery that goes with that. So at least it was my impression that the focal point of this authority from the townships, at least the initial buy-in, was to try and focus and highlight the recyclables as being the highlight. Now, understanding sometimes buying power with solid waste may ultimately also come into play, but I just wanted to make sure that there was a clarity, at least on my end, that nothing that we were doing here was going to be perceived as having any kind of a negative
You are correct.
impact, short-term or long-term, upon our compost facility, because those people in that facility work very, very hard, and we've actually expanded that operation to include Canton Township, and so I just want to make sure that going forward, the direction of the board was, again, my focal point of that meeting was how
Right.
to make the recyclable component.
And that's where we ended up. And I want to reiterate our other conversation. I do have the 12 communities do have a compost center. It's in Rochester. We haven't told Rochester it's in Rochester, but it is there. It's big, and we talked about maybe sharing some visitations, have our folks come look at your operations and your folks look at our operations, because from what I know, I was at a DEQ meeting several weeks ago. We have a state shortage right now of viable composting facilities, viable. A lot of people composting, but not a lot of folks doing it the way you're doing it and the way we're doing it. And maybe we could still get together on that. I think it would be nice for you guys to look at what we're doing and us to look at what you're doing.
All right,
Great.
thank you. So
Good stuff. Thank you for allowing us to be here.
the next step is, after the other communities adopt it, you come back in the same order? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, whenever your schedule permits, we'll be reaching out to you to get on your agenda.
All right, well, the next item on the agenda then
Okay.
is asset management.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Winters, thank you as always. Thank you.
Hi there.
Hello. We ready to proceed?
Sure.
All right. So I see it came up on the screen. So my name is Scott Miller. I'm a Deputy Water Resources Commissioner. So I actually was going to say, hey, I'm happy to be here tonight, although I was actually talking to my wife, reminding her that I might be a little late coming home tonight because I was going to be at Ypsilanti Township. I live in Pittsfield, so it's just a short little jaunt, but she's like, go good. Stop at Pita Pita on your way home and get this, and this. And I was like, I don't mind doing it, but I had a tip from someone earlier that maybe we could try the Caspian. It's on our way home. It's on my way home. Maybe can I just do that? And she essentially said, no, you're going to go to Pita Pita because that's where we like to eat. So. But I am happy to be here. So I see you do have the packet that we submitted. It's a proposed asset management plan for Ypsilanti Township for drainage, stormwater infrastructure. I've had the pleasure, and I still have the pleasure of serving on a few county boards. So I'm confident and sure you've read it, every page, in preparation for the meeting tonight, and there's probably not a lot for me to say. But that being said, I did have a short presentation, and to be honest, I really wasn't anticipating doing like a PowerPoint slide type of step through of this, because you can read this at your leisure and go through it. Really what I was hoping to do, and these things, and I have kind of presented a similar type of thing for a couple other communities as we're going through the county. I found they can go in a whole lot of different directions depending on what people's interest in the material is and what items they want to focus on. So what I'll try to do is, what I was hoping to do is talk about how we do stormwater management currently in the county and in the township. Talk about the asset management plan a little more in general, an overview of how we'd like to change doing our infrastructure management in what I think is a better and more economical way. Try to touch on what I think is what ends up being the heart of the conversation is, how do we pay for it? How does the township pay for it? How does the citizenry pay for this? And I brought this. So this is the Michigan Drain Code of 1956, as amended. This is what governs everything we do and covers a lot of those questions about how we get the money to pay for all this. And I bring it because I did go to a meeting once and have someone say, can you read the drain code for us?
Please.
And I was, like, are you joking? It's 25 chapters and however many hundreds of pages long. And, it's a very complex piece of legislation that, in retrospect, I could see how someone would go, well, if it's a law, it should just be a page or two or something short. So that may be a more detailed conversation of how are we going to pay for this. And then finally, I was hoping to wrap up with a little bit more specific detail of like what we really want to do in Ypsilanti Township and what we're proposing to do and what we'd like to get the board to approve going forward in 2019 and then the years beyond. So if that works, I'll go through it that way. I certainly can take questions as we go or at the end, however it works best for the board or the chair. So that being said, I think I'll start out with how we take care of our drainage system now. So if you're not aware, Washtenaw County, the Water Resources Commissioner, there are legally established county drains within the county and in Ypsilanti Township. I think there's a little over 90 drains that either lie wholly or partially in Ypsilanti Township that are legally established county drains. And the simply way of putting this is the county or our office is responsible for the maintenance, upkeep, repair, the functioning of those county drains. It also includes, we have some regional basins. If some people are familiar with the Paint Creek Basin up the road on Whitaker, a little ways from here. We're also now responsible for the Tyler Dam, the care and upkeep of that. We've been responsible for the upkeep and care of Buyer Dam, which is upstream of Tyler Dam, up in what is now the ACM property. So that's also part of our purview of what we do in the township. But really to step back to what the asset management plan is about, it's really about how we maintain these drains and these dams and how we take care of them. And the way we currently do it is what I would say is by and large what I would call a reactive system of maintenance and repair. So a lot of what we do is someone calls in and says they have a flooding issue, a water quality issue, et cetera, and we respond. And if it's a county drain, then our field staff, which we do have a field staff that can do some maintenance work and do construction work, they will respond in an attempt to fix that problem. So that happens on a weekly basis, happens in Ypsilanti Township for sure, and it is an effective way to keep the drains flowing in the sense that whenever we're apprised of a flooding situation, we can correct that specific situation. Another thing we do in Ypsilanti Township, kind of based on the history of these, what we call service requests, is we do a lot of inspection and what I'll call a little bit of proactive work. So in your urbanized areas, north of Ford Lake, near the city of Ypsilanti, we have a lot of drainage systems that are under the streets. One notably we call Buyer Relief, for example. We historically, now in the winter, we get a lot of calls where if snow and ice gets pushed over the roadside catch basins, for example, the residents will call us and say, there's flooding in front of my house because the water can't get into our infrastructure. Similarly, in the fall, leaf, debris, litter, et cetera, tends to clog them. So we get a lot of calls from people saying that they have issues in the fall. So based on our institutional history and our knowledge of the system, part of our program is to periodically go out and proactively take care of those kind of instances. So we do a lot of catch basin and grate cleaning, for example, in the urbanized areas. So some of the work's done that way. But by and large, we just react. People call us for a flooding issue, we come out and we fix that specific problem. But what we found is happening is, especially as the infrastructure ages, and as you'll see in the report, these county drains have been established over the last 100-some years, some as early as 1900. We have county drains in the county that go back to the 1800s, for example. You have a lot of drains up in the urbanized areas that were established in the late 60s, early 70s, so they're getting on to 50 years old or more. Is we're starting to find that these drains, as they age, as they deteriorate, that because we've been unable to do periodic cleaning, periodic maintenance, and other things to keep them a little more functional and operational, they're starting to deteriorate at a little bit faster rate now, and we're starting to respond more and more frequently to problems on the same drain. So recently, if you're aware of some of the activities we've done, we've responded to some pretty significant breaks, like just up the road near Eagle Crest or on the Eagle Crest Golf Course property. We had a pretty big break. We've had repeated calls and repeated responses in the Streamwood subdivision, for example, the Smoker Textile subdivisions, Partridge Creek. A lot of these systems we're finding we're having to respond more and more frequently, and we can get them running, but it's not really a cost-effective way overall to just perpetually maintain these drains. So that kind of leads me to the asset management plan that we're proposing for you tonight. And essentially, it really is what I would call a different way or a different philosophy of trying to maintain our infrastructure. And I mean, we've talked about it nationally, on the federal level with the roads in particular, trying to figure out how to fix the roads. Very similar, how are we going to fix our storm drains? Because they do deteriorate over time, they do need upkeep. And the asset management program that we're proposing, I would say it essentially says, instead of just reacting to our problems and just spending our money that way, let's go ahead and try to do everything proactively. And then if we can get ahead of the problem, if we can get the drains rehabilitated before they deteriorate to a point where we're just constantly responding to problems, if we can take our open channels, for example, which you have a few in the township, if maybe we could keep them mowed, keep the sediment levels down on them to a lower degree, that we won't have to wait until there's 50-year-old oak trees growing in the middle of the channel and have to spend a lot of money to deal with debris and log jams and downfalls, things of that nature. So that's really, the whole report is simply kind of coming down to that philosophy of why don't we go ahead and take care of the problems we know about now, try to rehabilitate the things that are broken, and then start maintaining things and proactively taking care of them. And what we found in other communities, other nations have found is that's much more cost effective and more economical over the life cycle, which in this case is kind of in perpetuity, because there's not really a foreseen ending date where we're going to stop using these drains. That over the long term, this is a much more economical and a cheaper way of keeping our drains running, and that they will function better over time. So, that being said, usually the question comes out, well, it may be cheaper, but how are we going to pay for this? So, back to the drain code again. And again, I don't want to belabor this if everyone here is fairly conversant with it, but sometimes there's differing levels of, I guess, knowledge on how we do our business. But real briefly, I would say, by and large, there have been exceptions here and there, but everything we do, we have to assess for. So another way of putting this is there's no running tax bill. The federal government doesn't give us money. The state doesn't give us money. There's not an ongoing operation stormwater tax on your local tax bill that pays for this. So what happens, and it's set out by the drain code, is if we do work on a drain, the drain district, which is roughly the watershed that serves that drain, is responsible for paying the cost. So in some cases, that cost is borne by the local unit of government or the township, and then also the county government, and that's the road agencies. So drain districts that have public roads in them, the road commission would be on the hook for a portion of the cost. And then if you have a major thoroughfare like I-94, MDOT, they might be responsible as well. So some drains are paid for by Ypsilanti Township and the road agencies. Some other drains, and they're all done individually by drain. Some drains are paid for by the township, the roads, and then the properties, or the property owners that live in that drain district. So, so you have a mix of those in the township. And the report, that's one thing I know is of note to people. So I tried to put on the chart which drains are wholly borne by the township and roads, and which drains have a property owner share to them as well. And essentially the way it works is if we do work on the drain, we borrow the money in the interim to pay for whatever work we're doing, and then at the end of the year, we go and send out an assessment bill to the township and to possibly the owners, depending on what kind of drain it is. So it's probably a very simple way of looking at it, but I guess it's a good segue depending on where the questions might go. So that being said, the real reason I'm here is to talk about Ypsilanti Township and what we'd like to do in Ypsilanti Township. So again, I'm happy to step through it, page by page. I think another way I wanted to approach this, and however you want to go through this, I think it's up to your pleasure, of course, but I wanted to talk about Ypsilanti Township, what we're proposing to do now, and then what I guess I would envision is we'd like to get approval on a plan for this year, for 2019, with the idea that we would revisit the plan and maybe on an annual basis or even more frequently, depending on what the comfort level of how our collaborative effort goes. And then revisit the plan periodically to update it, revise it, and see if it needs to be changed, tweaked, or otherwise overhauled. So I have in the plan something for 2019, a plan for 2020, and then like a 4-year 2021 to 25 idea. But realistically, what we found is if we revisit this annually, we do a little bit better with our fine tuning of how this goes. So I'll try to focus on 2019. And what I did, and to kind of get in a little more depth on the asset management program, is when we decide or we try to propose, like, what do we want to work on this year? Essentially what we do is we take a list of all the data we have on the drains, and that might be, we know the age of the drain, we know what material each drain is made out of, we know how big the drains are, of course we know where they're located, and then we can do an assessment or do inspections on them to see what kind of condition they're in. And as you would suspect, the older drains tend to be in a little worse condition than the newer ones. And some drains, notably, and this is where some of the stuff in Ypsilanti Township came from, drains that are made out of corrugated metal pipe, for example, those tend to have a much shorter service life than other kinds of drains that are made out of concrete, for example, or even ones made out of clay tile, the older ones. And so we take that into account of age, material, the type of drain we have. We look at our maintenance history, like how many times are we going out to these things? Because some drains in the township are 80, 90, 100 years old, and no one ever calls us. We never get a complaint. So we want to factor that in, that maybe it doesn't make sense just to go out to a drain just because it's old, because it might be working fine. We look at, another thing we look at is what we call the consequence of failure. So one aspect to this is you do have some open channels, for example, and some of them are in a little bit more rural areas or areas that are have a lot of wetland type of ground on them. If those drains were to break and fail in an area that maybe they are woodlands or maybe they are wetlands areas, the consequence of them failing is pretty low. Like, if a wetland floods and it's not causing property damage, it's not causing flooding concerns for property owners, it's not causing road damage, it's, maybe we don't want to prioritize that as high. But conversely, when you get up, into your urbanized areas, some of our bigger drains, if they fail, we're looking at road closures. We may be looking at property damage due to flooding. We may be looking at a higher consequence. If this thing breaks, we might have a big problem. So we look at things like that. We also look at what our spending limits are, because the nice drain code lays out to us a spending limit that we can spend on each drain. And then we also want to kind of look at, among a variety of other things, what's the economic burden on the township, the property owners, et cetera. Because just because something needs a lot of work, if it's going to be an undue hardship to pay for it, we might want to think twice about it. So I tried to factor a lot of those type of data points into this asset management plan, and we could certainly go into more depth on how excited you are to talk about that. It can be fun, but I'll just draw your attention. So this one is actually outside or in the appendices of the plan, and I have it as a separate kind of broken out worksheet as well, is I wanted to talk, and I think it's good to go through this because it kind of talks about how we approach the asset management. So I'll touch on real briefly on our 2019 proposal, and I've broken it out that.
What page is that on?
So this one you could either see as like appendix.
Yeah, appendix A.
Yeah, it's 16 in the packet, and then it's also a separate summary sheet that I pulled out if you wanted to just look at summary sheets. But this is just sort of the general format of how the asset management program got put together. It's all kind of boils down to the same thing. So it starts out is, we know we're going to still respond to service requests. We're going to get calls. 2019, we've already been running a bill that I think is a little above average for what you've historically spent, or above. We're a little high, and I think it somewhat relates to some of the things I mentioned. We spent a lot of money repairing the Huron Office Center drain over at Eagle Crest when that broke.
That was last year.
Yeah, it's in this fiscal year for us.
Oh,
So we've spent a lot of time and effort out at Streamwood. We've spent a lot of time and effort out at Partridge Creek. We were out to Upper Paint Creek a bit. We were in North Ford Lake quite a bit, in going into this year and beyond. So the bill's a little higher than it has been historically. I put a budget number in here, which frankly speaking, I can't predict, because it's really based on who calls us and how expensive the repair is going to be. So that's the one number I would say is variable in any one year, is like how many service requests or how many times do we have to react to a problem? The idea, of course, is the more proactive we get, we have seen, and we're very confident that the number over time is going to go down. The reactive budget goes down over time correspondingly, but any given year fluctuation, I'm guessing a little bit. So that's the number I'm a little least certain about. I also have on here a list of proactive items. I've kind of broken it out into some open channel work. And here I have them listed as Willow Run, Tyler Dam, and our mowing program, for example. So those are the open channel drains. So if you might be familiar with Willow Run, that's the drain that leads from all the YTD drains, the urbanized areas, runs through the Buyer Dam, the ACM property, runs down
we just put $1 million in it, 800 and
yes.
something.
What goes down to the Tyler Dam, et cetera. And Tyler Dam got cleared upstream of the impoundment, all the yucca work happened, but there's still an intermediate stretch between the Tyler Dam corridor and the Buyer Dam that hasn't been touched in decades, which we'd like to kind of connect that dot and clear things going up. And the thought being, much like what you said, you put a lot of money into Tyler Dam. If we don't do something, like if we don't at least mow the banks to keep trees from growing up, is 10, 15 years from now, Tyler Dam is going to have a bunch of cottonwoods and a lot of other woody vegetation that grows up and makes it very hard to maintain and very expensive to maintain going forward. So the thought is, we've put a lot of money into this, or you've put a lot of money into this. Let's go ahead and start maintaining this. Let's mow it. I mean, we don't mow it weekly. It's not like a landscaping company, but we'll go out once a year, sometimes once every other year, just to knock down the trees and stuff that, you know, fall into the drain and start causing problems. Because we don't want this to start deteriorating where we have a jungle like we have just downstream from Buyer Dam. That's pretty much impassable right now. Another thing I've got on here is proactive is similar type of thing is, but for the piped systems. So I have on here the Ypsilanti Township 1 and Ypsilanti Township 8. Those are two drains established, I'm guessing, but they're going to be in the late 60s, early 70s, made out of corrugated metal pipe. We want to get in there and clean out all the dirt, debris, the other things that have accumulated in them over time and get them running better. So it's the same idea for the piped program as the open channel, but I just sort of separate them between the two categories. We were fortunate enough to have a grant to do a lot of data collection and assessment of drains in the county a couple of years ago. We did a lot in Ypsilanti Township too, so we kind of know the condition of a lot of your drains through that program, but there are some drains that we didn't get to during that program, or we didn't have the money to do all the drains in the township. So on this list is to actually do inspections and actually look at some of the drains that we don't know what kind of condition they're in. I picked two out here that are in residential areas that we've had a little bit of service request activity to suggest that we may be having problems. But again, that's sort of what I would call the third prong of our program is some drains we don't know a lot about. We'd like to at least figure out what's going on them and do that. And then finally, I have what I call renewal. And these are drains that essentially we've identified that are in a state of either failure or impending failure that we want to try to, we're not going to rebuild them and put a brand new drain in necessarily, but what we call it is a renewal program, is where we try to rehabilitate the drain so that we can start putting it on a proactive maintenance program. Buyer relief is a good example, is we're out there a lot in all those neighborhoods. But essentially what we're doing is just clearing grades and responding to isolated requests, and we haven't had an opportunity to actually work on the system itself. So that's one I'd like to work on. We call it Rec Park or Recreation Park Sub. That subdivision, a lot of service request history there that we're having issues with. And then finally, on the 19 plan, I have Ypsilanti Township Consolidated, number 1, where that one we've had a lot of response to, and we know that unfortunately the tree cover above that drain has finally gotten into the pipe. And as you can guess, there's a lot of trees that like to be near water, and if they can find the water within our drain, they start growing considerable root masses. So, not that I like doing it, but we have in our pole barn where we have a lot of equipment, we have a lot of root masses and little pipe sections that are anywhere from 12 to 24 or larger diameters of just 100% root masses that we've taken out of drains. So the final part of this plan, though, is the renewal, that we have drains that are not in such great shape that we want to start bringing back up to a better level of service. So again, I didn't know where you maybe wanted to go with the conversation. So this hopefully was a somewhat brief summary of that. But again, that's why we're here. That's why I'm here. If wherever you want to go and talk about what our proposal is or more specifics, we can do it.
And you're doing this in every community?
I would love to. We've started. So we've talked to Augusta Township. We've done Northfield Township. This is the next one. But I would love if I could do 20 townships in every local unit of government, you know, from city of Ypsilanti to the city of Ann Arbor to Manchester, et cetera. I mean, we have county drains in virtually every community. So, yeah, I would
So
like
do
to be.
you have staff to do all of that? Or do you contract that out?
There's a combination. Right now, we have the staff. So we do have a field staff. Right now, the plan would be this sort of work outside of the renewals. I mean, there's some renewal work where we would get a contractor and do competitively bid, pricing. But a lot of the proactive and inspection work I would do internally. If I ever get to that day where I've got 25 communities all buying into a program, yeah, then you're absolutely right. I'm sure I'm going to have to reassess whether my staffing is adequate or if I need to, enter into some sort of agreement with another firm or suite of firms to get it done. But we're not quite there yet. Right now, a lot of this is being proposed to be done internally with our staff.
So I think I understand that you would like us to adopt the asset management plan at another meeting and then look at what we can fund, like we do roads and.
Yeah, I mean, and as you know, so there are a few things, so again, back to the drain code. So we're limited by statute. We can spend up to $5,000 for every mile of county drain that we maintain. So if let's go to one, if Ypsilanti Township 1 consolidated, I think it's like 1.2 miles long, I can spend $10,000 there without asking anybody permission. I can just spend it. In this case, I want to spend $15,000. Then it gets to the drain code. So if it's a chapter 20 under the drain code, which means that there's the township and the roads are paying for all of it, then I can just go to the statutory drain board and get, permission to spend the money there and do it. If there's essentially owners or private property that has to pay for it, and I want to exceed the limit, in those cases, we either have to get a resolution from the township to allow us to exceed the spending limit, or we would have to get a petition or go through a petition process. So what we're kind of asking, to get back to your point, Ms. Dumbo, is we're asking you to adopt the asset management plan with the thought that we would like to touch base with you at least annually and update it. And then we would also include like a resolution or resolutions along with that to allow us to exceed spending in those cases where we need them. So that would be also included as something we would ask.
Chapter 20 or?
That would be like the chapter 3/4s or the 18s.
Chapter 3/4?
Yeah, under the drain code. The chapter 3/4s and the 18s are ones where we would look for
3,
resolutions.
4, and 18.
Yeah.
Madam Chair.
Just a moment. Okay, thank you. Yes.
I just had a clarification about the Appendix A. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it right. So the percentages that you have between the total cost and the township portion, that percentage is indicative of what we would pay based on the watershed area that comes from the drain code?
It's not based on the watershed area. It's based on what chapter of the drain code the drain was established under, and then how the costs were apportioned for that district. So it's done on a district-by-district basis. And yes, you're exactly right. The township portion is the percentage the township would have to pay of whatever bill gets generated. But it doesn't, it's not based on the size of the district. It's based on how the drain was established, if that makes sense.
Just one last question. Can I have like a paper copy of the drain code?
I would say yes.
Okay.
I mean, I can give you mine if you want.
I mean, I wouldn't want to take yours, but if you left it here, I would have to take
We
it.
got a lot.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
And you can enjoy that. I will.
Light reading.
I've been with the county it's my 23rd year. I don't think I've read every word in that yet, so.
Clerk Rowe?
So on that Appendix A, where it shows total cost and it shows the township percentage and then township portion, is that expected from the township, or are those things that are going to be charged back, or is it just going to be a variety one based on what type of drainage district is, whether it's going to go back to the private owners?
So it should, the way, and hopefully it makes sense, is because we knew there would be a discussion like who has to pay what?
Right.
The way we tried to do it is the township percentage and the township portion is an estimate of what your assessment bill would be.
The townships.
The townships, if you were to adopt the plan. So that, and then I've got on that separate sheet an owner portion, if, the private property owners have to pay a share, and then also a road portion, whether it's the road commission
missed
or
that.
MDOT.
Where's that at?
That was I did a separate summary
Oh,
sheet
at the end.
attachment.
Okay.
But again, at that, I didn't know what everyone was interested in
Oh, I got it.
kind of looking at, so. But Ypsilanti Township historically, and I don't, for deference to Mr. Doe, I don't want to misstate this. Township has generally historically paid every assessment on a year-by-year basis. And because we can kind of finance certain projects, like you mentioned Tyler Dam, that was a multi-million-dollar project. We have the ability, and we certainly do this all the time with the owner, the private property type drains where they're involved, is we can, and they do pay an interest rate, depending on what gets established, but we can have the drain assessments be maybe a 3-year assessment or a 5-year assessment or something like that for a larger project, so that everyone doesn't have to pay it all off in one go. And we do that on occasion when we have a project that either has only a couple parcels in it, where only 10 to 12 property owners are getting the brunt of an entire bill, or cases, not that Tyler was in this camp, but if we have multi-million-dollar projects where it's like, hey, this is, someone's facing a couple $1,000 bill, we can break that up over many years, so it's hopefully a little more palatable.
Sometimes it's more cost-effective to pay, sometimes it's $2 or 50 cents or $3 or $4. It's really easier just to pay that amount than to have it separated out on the tax bill and everyone asking, why am I paying $2 for something? It's just, we've always paid the smaller amount.
Smaller ones.
Yeah, so where I'm at, I'm in 2 districts, and I typically get a bill every year between, like one of them's like $4 or $5, and one of them's like $8 or $9 if we're not doing work there. And it's, But again, not to get into it, if we wanted to, I wish our assessment person was here, but we also sometimes pre-assess. So we'll sometimes, to try to alleviate that type of situation, we'll either just pre-assess a bill so that we don't have to do a later bill for 50 cents or 100 or $1 or something like that. And then occasionally we'll just hold the bill until we know they're enough that it makes it worth sending out the assessment. But our assessment coordinator, essentially, she looks at that situation on a district by district basis and decides what's, and of course, our commissioner gets the last word, but makes recommendations on how we go about assessing, so.
Just, for 2019, if I read this correctly, the amount for the township is $328,500 proposed?
Yeah, I wish you wouldn't have said it all the way down to the dollar, but yes.
No, but somewhere around.
Yes. I'm very confident it won't be exactly that number.
Right.
But yeah.
And then the owner portion would be 177, and the road portion would be 249.
Yep. So if I hit every estimate perfectly, that's how they would get
Do
paid.
you ever, sometimes the road commission will rate them, as far as A, B, C priority?
Yep.
Based on the condition of it. So which one would you, if we didn't do the whole amount, what would be your first priority? What would be your second? 'Cause
My first priority is I'd love to get into rec park sub. That would probably be my first priority.
Okay, you didn't have to answer it right now. I was just wondering if there was possibility that you could actually rank them. And so rec park, I see, as you says your first.
Okay. Yeah, I can give you if you wanted, yeah.
Because a lot of
That's,
it's.
that's what kind of the document was, is
Yeah.
not exactly, but essentially like, hey, we're comfortable doing 1, 2, and 4 right now. We want to defer or eliminate this one and have that kind of dialogue of what makes the most sense for the township, either pragmatically or economically, and then adjust the plan based on that.
Right. Evan, did you?
I was just going to chime in on two things, just on that last point. The good thing about starting a program where there hasn't been systematic maintenance is there's no bad place to start. So like Scott said, anytime the township felt, we're hearing a lot from people in this area versus that area, you can do it. I would say really the A, B, C, and D, you could almost just go with year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 is kind of how those are prioritized. We're probably, we're probably 3 to 5 years away from making any sophisticated choices. Right now, there's no bad place to start because all of these things are pretty far behind. So that's one thought. The other thought is we're seeking approval of the 2019 game plan, and this is the fun part you touched on earlier. Our fiscal year for drain maintenance is a July to 1 to June 30 fiscal year. We're in 2019 now. The good part for you've already set your 2019 budget for calendar 2019, and as you all may know, we send you a bill on December 1st, and that's not due on all of these maintenance. This would all be done through maintenance, and those bills are not due, of course, until you're into 2020. So the beauty of that is, I think it's February due date for payment of those, end of February. The good news is, this process allows us all time for good budget planning. We're going to start with one and then another. We might have 3 going on at once, but at any time, Scott's going to be monitoring what we told you, particularly the part we can't control, but also there's prizes on the ones that we had a good estimate on. And we'll be able to say, hey, you know what, we kind of reached the limit. Do you want us to just stop even though we're 3 months from the end of our year? Or do you want to go ahead and continue the rest of this year because of whatever the conditions are? So just a point of, yes, we're approving 2019, but you wouldn't really be writing a 2019 check for this work. It would be a 2020 check. So for what it's worth. And that said, in 2019, you've got to, if you didn't pay us already for 2018, that means it'll be pending. I don't know if you all pay as soon as you get it or not. So that's the fun financial part.
Thank you. Clerk Rohr?
Yeah, for us, I understand, and that's really good because I guess you could lock it down, but we can't spend money without budgeting it. So even though the bill's not till later, so if I heard you right, we just need to decide, adopt the plan, because that's not going to commit us to dollars. And then through some resolution, we're going to commit us a certain amount of dollars in your fiscal year, in this 2019. I'm just trying to follow, and maybe I'm asking too many technical questions, like what's coming back to the board in terms of, do we decide amongst ourselves in-house about, well, we got $200,000 and then you guys help us pick out which ones do you think are the priorities? Is that what you're thinking? And then we'd end up, because I'm thinking in the past, is it through a resolution or is it through a contract? Resolution that says.
Some of these are resolutions.
Okay, we'll spend up to this amount on these 3 drains or something?
Yeah, but again, we're not.
Maybe we're getting too technical.
My thought was, I didn't want to come in here and certainly go, well, I have the right to work on some drains without your approval, and I'm just going to do it.
Right.
But, so my thought was kind of like, how does Ypsilanti Township work best? Is kind of the way I was looking at this is, yeah, if that's the way you want to work, is like, okay, we have a list of suggestions that we think we'd like to see done this year, and you wanted to go down and say, let's do this one, we agree to this one, we don't want to do this one, let's strike this one. Our office does have that flexibility that we're not, we can work according to those wishes. So, yeah, there are the resolutions that would be necessary in some cases, depending on what type of drain it is, but my actual intent was, I didn't want to come with a plan that said, okay, you're used to spending $300,000 a year historically, let's spend 1.2 million. Because obviously it's, it's just going to be too big of a budget hit. So it's an increase over what you've paid historically. I think historically you've paid a little over 300,000 a year. So yeah, it's an increase, but certainly the thought is if you wanted to adopt it kind of as a package, that's great. But if you wanted to have more of a line-by-line conversation of, what really makes sense and where do you want to maybe even add something that you know about that I missed, or take stuff off due to the cost constraints.
And there's always room when
Yeah, we
you,
would-
I'm sorry, there's always room, when you adopt a resolution to maybe add or at the discretion of the, full-time elected officials on a routine basis, to go back and forth and actually do the picking or selecting. If the board wants to pick the dollar amount that is the most you're comfortable with, and then leave all the back and forth, to whomever is appropriate, whether it's on staff or your full-time officials, we can structure a resolution, like Scott said, what works best for the township, to know that you're not getting overextended, that, we survive by spending other people's money, but we want to spend the money in the places that people are comfortable spending it, and you're getting the bang for your buck.
Monica?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a couple questions. I'm gonna go slow, so that way I'll make sure I get them all. I particularly want to talk about buyer relief. I noticed basically when you go past and I'm hoping I'm doing this direction right, west side of Tyler Road, that it does not appear to be a lot of drains there. But in the same aspect, because it's on a slope, it gets a lot of concentration. Like it gets a lot of flooding whenever it rains. And basically, when the winter months are over, it gathers. And it gathers really bad after a storm. And I guess I was curious in regards to, are there drains there? I know I see drains, so.
Yeah, I think it's kind of fun, but
Okay.
yes. The short answer is yes, there's drains. It's a question of who has the jurisdictional authority over those drains. So in those cases where we don't have an officially established county drain, and again, I didn't get into how they're done, but essentially, we don't have the authority to just create a county drain unilaterally. We actually kind of had to be asked or petitioned to create a county drain. So we took all these county drains as they were given to us, essentially. But that doesn't mean there's not drains there. So the road commission, there's a lot of public streets there,
Yeah.
for example. So a lot of times the road commission, there's the road drains. They're under the authority of the road commission. The drainage on I-94, 23, et cetera, MDOT has authority over them. In some cases, and this is in the city of Ann Arbor, for example, city might have, authority over them. But I'm painting a little bit of a broad brush, but it doesn't mean there's not drains there if there's not a county drain. It just might mean someone else has the jurisdictional authority or responsibility for it.
Yeah, because that was a question, because I know on the other side, which I would assume would be the east, or it could be north, side of Tyler Road, that it looks like with the blue lines that there's drains there that you all will manage. So particularly, I guess, when you go back to the north side of Tyler, it looks as if, and I don't know if drains run under the freeway, but if you go into, it looked like it's down draining coming from Ypsilanti Extension 3.
Mm-hmm.
So could it, and also up draining when it comes from Ypsilanti 8. So could it be that maybe some of those drains are going in those two areas?
It could be.
Could be?
Yeah.
Could be. Okay. All right. That was a question I had. I noticed this also a little bit like that on Carpenter Road and Pittsfield Cub View. And then I guess the last question, I want to make sure I'm reading it correctly, so give me a second. Yeah, I think you answered that one about open channels, what they are, because I was curious as to what they're defined as.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an official legal definition. I just kind of I differentiate our drains essentially between, is it in a pipe, underground, where you can't see the water running? I consider that a pipe or an enclosed system. And if it's an open channel, it doesn't matter if it's earthen, like a creek or a stream kind of thing, or even an agricultural, alongside the road type of thing. But as long as, I guess if it's in a conveyance where you could look down and see the water flowing, it's not underground, I call that an open channel.
Okay.
So some are earthen, some are actually man-made, so
Tuttle Hill is channel, right?
Okay.
Which one?
On Tuttle Hill between Huron River Drive and,
Tuttle Hill, there's the Gorton and the Derbyshire. The
It's wide
Derbyshire
open.
is on Tuttle Hill, most of that's open.
right.
Not all of it, some of, but, yeah.
And then the last question just relates to like the maintenance that you were saying. You notice, especially by your relief, you said that the area is, one of the more historical areas in the township. And so because of that, it gets, things inside the drains, of course. Just a general question, do you recommend basically maybe to, in the future after, if this is done, and obviously if the township adopts, any of the recommendations, to also have a maintenance that includes basically a street sweeper in order to help with the drains? I'm just curious. I didn't know.
It's a part of a lot of asset management plans. We don't have one. I'll start there. We do own, we own a Vactor machine to clean out pipe systems. We have drain staff, a field staff that can go out and do construction-related activities, et cetera. We do not own a street sweeper. But yeah, that is a part of a lot of well-established asset management plans. Why don't you get it off the street before it gets into the drain in the first place? So.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I think it's needed. We do utilities, roads, and we've never done storm drains, so I think it's wise to have asset management and try to budget towards it and make it better for all of our residents if it does. It keeps us stream clean and the lakes clean, right? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, I just want to say thanks for the explanation and going through that. It really helped me as a new trustee to, or I should say newer to the board, I should say. We're not new anymore, but newer to the board, understanding how everything operates. So thank you.
All right, well, thank you.
Then we're going to go to the regular agenda. And distributed was I need to ask Karen, the minutes of the January 15th regular meeting. Is that verbatim? Is that what?
Probably what I was thinking was,
We're on
Sorry.
consent agenda.
yeah, what I was thinking was, we could, because since they've already been approved, we can approve the verbatim and have them, the regular minutes, have them added to the 15th. Because we approved the 15th at the special meeting.
With the condition that it be verbatim.
Yeah, and so then I was thinking, okay.
Was that right?
Well, I didn't hear it that way, but that's okay. I can take that as just, we don't need to make a motion, I can just add them in. That's all right with everybody, yeah. I'll just add those into those. Like the motion was made to approve them, and I heard you say that you wanted those in there, but I didn't see that it's technically in the motion, but that's fine. I will add, if everybody agrees, to add the verbatim into the official minutes
Of January.
of the 15th. Because these are from I think it's the 15th. Verbatim's from the 15th.
Okay, I was just
Yeah,
trying to.
yeah, I know, it's confusing. And I apologize that we didn't get them sooner, but it takes literally, she's been working on these probably for 5 days. It's an extremely tedious process.
Point
We
of
just finished right before we came in here. Well, right before Ruby finished at 4:30. I think she came to me at 4 o'clock.
So point of clarification. So we're adding the verbatim minutes into the 15th, January 15th meeting. It would be, I'm assuming that would be once those minutes go onto the website with the update, it would be verbatim, correct?
Just that section.
Just that
We
section,
already,
right, just that
we
section.
already approved that things, and I will accept that that approval was contingent on adding the verbatim in, and we'll make that the official ones. All the minutes in that section will have all the verbatim in them when we post them.
So you will amend the minutes that are in the packet that said?
No, because 15's not in the packet. We already,
No. In the special meeting minutes, it said that we could listen to the,
oh, you said, oh, the approval?
yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah, yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yep, gotcha, yeah.
So somehow put in there that,
Yeah, we'll just change the motion. We'll add that to the motion. I thought that was just added, but we can just, if that's what everybody's understanding was, we'll just add that that was motion was made to approve the regular meetings with the verbatim
only on that one section.
on that one section. Did you get that, Lisa? Okay. I think I got it, yeah.
I'll say so.
Yeah, thank you.
And verbatim. I just want to get it right here. New business one. Right. Okay, and we also had distributed, was the statements and checks.
Yeah, and we just got those. There was a computer glitch all afternoon and day, so Mila just got those at the very last minute. That's why they're,
But they're distributed to everyone,
right.
and you'll put them in the packet.
Yeah, we'll put them in the packet.
Is that all right with you?
That's all
Are you
right.
good with it? So are there any questions on the consent agenda with the corrections made to the minutes that the verbatim section is added? Questions on that?
Just one question, so I just want to make sure I'm correct. We will be approving the statements and checks without seeing them, they will come later?
You got it right here on your.
They distributed them.
Yeah.
They just, okay, all right, maybe I missed the distributing, that's what it was.
And it'll be added to the packet.
Okay, gotcha, I want to make sure, again, thank you. Is it, oh, here, okay, thank you. All right, well, this is mine, so is this it right here? This is mine? Or is it in the minutes?
Oh, I don't know, maybe I grabbed yours.
Okay, I don't know, I just want to make
Yeah,
sure I
this
have
is it.
Okay,
I already
got
looked
you.
at them, so you can have that one.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you,
no
because I didn't have it in front of, yeah, now I do, thank you.
Attorney's report, Mr. Winters?
I can wait.
Oh, it's going to be a long board meeting then. Under old business, we have the request of trustee Monica Ross Williams to rescind local government approval of a small wine maker's license and an on-premise tasting permit for Patrick Eklund and Jeffrey Frazier to be located at 1497 Ecorse Road.
Madam Chair.
Monica,
First things first, I'm going to take this slow so people, I want to make sure it's clear why I'm asking to do this in the first place. At the meeting that we had on January 15th, at the time, when I was looking at my iPad, I thought we were voting on a small winemaker's license. So in other words, basically, to give the proprietors the authority to go to the Lara in Lansing to pursue that. As for the on-premise part, I thought, as far as I knew, that was coming back. And so I was looking at a memo that was dated January 15th. Well, I'll change that. Actually, that is not the memo I was looking at. I was actually looking at the memo that was dated December 21st. The December 21st memo, it read as followed. Patrick Eklund at 1497 Ecorse Road is requesting a local government approval for local government approval in pursuit of a small winemaker's license from the state of Michigan, Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, Liquor Control Commission, MLCC. Now, with that, I shouldn't have called a question. I shouldn't have, because technically, there was another memo, and it was dated January 15th, 2019. On that memo, the first paragraph read as follows. Patrick Eklund at 1497 Ecorse Road, it is requested local government approval for local government approval in pursuit of a small winemaker's license and on-premise tasting room permit for the State of Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Liquor Control Commission. And if I would have read the second memo that I had the packet for on Friday, I had the Friday packet in front of me. That is the packet I did have in front of me, was the Friday packet, not the revised packet. When I say in front of me, as in on my iPad. If I would have had this second memo, the questions that was asked by Supervisor Stumbo and also Treasurer Doe were valid questions. They were, and I would not have called a question. I want to make sure I put on the record that, and this is not something that I have to do, but this is something that I want to do. I apologize for calling a question when the information was not completely in front of me. But in the same aspect, the second half of that is the information, the second memo was not in front of me. I do believe that this issue can be fixed. I don't want to have the petitioner not be able to pursue the small winemaker's license as long as everything else is in order. That's not what I'm asking, but again, as long as everything else is in order. And I think that's a debatable aspect in front of the board, for the board to discuss. So that's where my discussion starts.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Trustee Wilson?
Yeah, out of many emails that we all received over the last 2 weeks, has everyone received all information that was in question? I know there was a lot of, because I wasn't able to be a part of that portion of the meeting. Has everyone at this point okay with the information they've received and feel comfortable moving forward? That would be my question. Because from what I've read, the applicant has been more than willing to provide as much information as he can, and I definitely don't want to hold him up any longer, so he can kind of get things moving. So I just want to kind of see what the rest of the board felt as far as information that was needed.
We do have a lot of information, and hopefully that information can be part of a packet in there, so people know what we received afterwards, because when this came before us, we only had 2 pieces of paper. And it just wasn't enough information. It wasn't the fault of the petitioner. We just did not have enough information to make a decision, which is why we wanted to table it. The only part I don't have, and I'm not sure if you sent it out later, Clerk Rowe, was what was submitted to you in December. I don't have any of that information. So the original letter and the communication going. So I have communication with Charlotte and communication with, I think, Bellers.
Yeah, what
But
was
none
sent to
from the
me,
clerk's office.
yeah, and just for the record, what was sent to me was what was in the packet last time. That's exactly what was sent to me. And that process that we moved forward, of course, was we were handling it as, I'm sorry, yeah, I'm on. We were handling it as a brewery or a winemakers as we had since 2012 with the new information from our
I was just asking for your information.
Yeah, so the 2 pieces of information that were in the packet were the information that we had. Of course, with the memo that was substituted was sent out in an email to everybody. But that's the only information that we had was the memo from the petitioner or the applicant and Charlotte's memo, which is what we normally had for That's how we normally had. And just for information, so what I've tried to do since then with all the information, and I apologize for the emails, but I just want to be transparent as much as possible. So every time I got something from any department or from the applicant, I shared that. What you got late last night, because we worked very late, was a packet which I thought was more reasonable, and it actually included all the other stuff with the exception of all of the emails that went back. It was 80 pages of emails that went back to March of 2018 between Charlotte and the applicant. So I didn't put those in there, but everything else was, I had him fill out the, from what Attorney King had asked, I took the kind of process of like, okay, now we're going to handle this as a liquor license versus a winemakers and breweries as we had in the past. So I had him fill out the application for that and then answered all those questions, as you can see in the packet, that's required by the applicant for the liquor license application. Ypsilanti Townships included the state application that he filled out, and all those financial, all the things that Lara required, that's all in there, and then had all the building department reviews and the sketch, which is is now in there. The only thing that's not in there, but I called around, is two things that our ordinance requires that we don't have to date, but one of them is the fire department. But talking to the Fire Marshal Kimball, he did go out with, I think it was Bonks that did the review, and he went out on site when the building department went on site, and he said that he normally does his reviews after all the construction's been done. He will do an inspection before and has to okay it before the certificate of occupancy. So he said that's normally how he does his on liquor reviews. It's always, especially if it's a place that's under construction. If it's not, he can do it sooner. And then the one on the police department, my understanding is normally sent to the sheriff's department, where they actually look for calls of service to any businesses that both the applicants might own, or any cause of services or any records that might have, that they might be involved in any kind of police cause or activities. So I don't have those two things, but I have everything else.
Clerk Rowe?
Yeah.
Jimmy asked a question if we received all the information. I have not received the information from the clerk's office, and I do know that there was other information that was the original request that was received in December. So I would just like to have.
Oh, you have that request. I only have one applicant request a memo, and that was in everything that I had, except with the exception of I didn't put both memos in, because we pulled the one, and then I didn't put them back in, is I only had the one request, the request from the applicant, the memo that he had, and both of those were put in the board packet. I didn't put back in the memos, because everybody's got that, and I didn't think, my understanding at the last meeting, you wanted more information, which I saw as like a regular liquor license. That's kind of what folks wanted. So I don't know if you don't want the information, if that's not what you were looking for. I don't know what you're talking about, just be frankly, Frank.
No, I know, because you're talking, not listening, but Jimmy asked me if we had received all the information, and what I had requested to make sure the file is complete is all the information that was sent to you and Lisa. And we don't have that. We don't have those emails. We don't.
What is that, so I can find it? Because I don't know what you're talking about. Are you referencing, because
All you got to do is check your file.
Yeah, but I think
right?
Jimmy was wanting to know whether you had what you needed, what you were bringing up last time, I thought. Like, you kept saying, I need more information to vote on this. That's not what you're talking about?
Jimmy asked if we got all the information that we requested. The only thing that we haven't received is the information that was requested from the clerk's office. That's all I was saying.
I don't know.
And so that was your question, that was the answer? Mm-hmm. So
Madam Supervisor, still don't have all the information you need to move forward with the winemaker license at this point in time? Is that it?
That's the only information I didn't receive. I would like to have that and have that be part of the complete file that we have on everybody.
Okay.
My biggest concern, which was the concern last time raised by Larry Doe, which is the parking. And building department doesn't have answers. Charlotte didn't review it from when you park in the back you have to either go through the car wash stall, or, I'm not sure, because they have it as an exit door, so if that one exit door could be an entrance door, I think that would solve the issue.
They can.
Just a moment, we're
Oh,
just,
sorry, I didn't know if we
so
were.
Jimmy and
All right.
Larry distributed, just a minute, it's a work session. Larry brought this up and distributed just photos so people can understand, because we didn't get the opportunity to discuss it last time. Larry, do you want to talk about it, or?
Well, one of the owners, I talked to him last week and explained what my situation was with the 62% of the parking's in the back. That means 62% of the patrons that goes in, of the 15 people or the 13 people that you have, has to walk through a car wash at the present time. Now, I don't know whether the owner of the car wash is given permission to walk through there. The major concern I have that even if that is the case, in the middle of winter, when people are doing their car, I mean, it's an ice skate inside those little self-service car washes, and they don't keep them solid. I'm just looking at the safety of the patrons that are going to come into the building and taste your wine or buy your wine or whatever they're doing, and have to go back out and walk across possibly ice in the wintertime.
Yeah, the back doors it's our back door for customers.
You need to go to the microphone if you want to ask. answer. And please, the person who does the minutes, they are not in the room, so.
Yeah, the back door, the door,
Your
we looked
name?
at it.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, we are Patrick Eklund.
I'm sorry.
That's
We have-
fine. Patrick Eklund of 1135 North Prospect in the township.
I'm Jeff Frazier, 1325 Hall Ave, Ypsilanti Township.
After talking with Trustee Doe, I went back and looked. I'm sure I can email you the files, but there's plenty of room for people to walk in, and the back door could be used as a regular door.
So the back door can, because
Yeah.
right now it's an exit door on your site plan that were approved. I think that will solve
It
it.
doesn't actually say what it is on the plan.
Madam Chair?
It just says,
I think that was my question when we talked Monday, is I asked the question of the two doors, and making an assumption that was an entrance door versus the front door being an entrance door, well, that sort of covered my concern.
Yeah.
But I was told that was a exit or emergency exit only, is exactly
yeah.
what you told me
That's what I
Monday.
said, because, I said I wasn't sure, because I didn't.
No, you said it was an exit.
Okay, well,
Emergency exit door is what you told me.
It's not, okay, well, I was wrong. It's not just, it can be a door. There's no specific use for that door.
Madam Chair, point of information. On the plans, sorry.
Just a moment.
I don't think it
I just want to clarify. So you're willing to use that exit door as a entrance?
Yeah.
Absolutely. We have two, so we have a front door and a back door.
Just because,
Just a point of information, on the Blueprint site, if I have it correct, in the information that was emailed, I think that says exit door. I mean, I may be wrong, but I mean, I think that's what it says there. It says existing
Existing
exit door. Okay,
Oh, existing, yeah.
okay. So, that's all.
so, yes, Clerk Rowe.
Yeah, after that conversation yesterday, I didn't hear that emergency thing, but but that doesn't mean it wasn't said, because I don't,
Oh,
yeah.
it says existing exit door.
Yeah, but anyways,
That's not to say that it can't be another type of door.
Right, anyway, so I drove out there and stuff, because I was really concerned about what Treasurer Doe had said in his office and stuff, and the car wash bay is totally separate from where you walk in. I counted, I thought it was 9 feet, but it shows you how much I know. I counted 9 cinder blocks, but Larry told me they're actually 18 inches, so that means it must be closer to 12 or 13 feet, where people can come. In the front, they could go in the front door, and in the back, they could go in that door and not be anywhere near the
Correct.
car wash bay for safety and water or whatever.
Madam Chair?
Trustee Ross Williams?
Thank you. I do have some questions, because I know that car wash quite well. I live around the corner. So, so basically now, I think we have established that that back door can be a exit and entry door, if I have it correct? Okay, because I know right now it looks like a steel door, so I'm assuming that door would have to be changed?
Yeah, we could change it.
Yeah, we have plans of upgrading things as needed.
Okay. And then the other part of that would be, because if it's not changed, which you already said that you would consider it, is that the car wash bay is actually on a slope. So it's a small one, but it's a slope. So with that, my concern, I know that if I have it correct, you're looking for 13 capacity, but in the same aspect, and which would, go under the ADA line just slightly, because I think it's 16. But just because it's under the ADA line does not necessarily mean that we should not still be trying to make things to the point that people that may have disabilities can't get in and out. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, long term, well, even medium term, we expect to be adding another bathroom at some point, hopefully, and then that will bring out, that as part of that, we'll have to bring everything up to code. So we're up to, modern ADA compliance. It's pretty close because it's not that old of a building, but if you've been to 734 Brewing, it's 100%. Everything is accessible. The arm rails are in the right places. I measured the height of the toilet paper dispenser, the sink, the feminine disposal thing. Everything is exactly code compliant.
Yeah, we've actually had a conversation about that slope into that side door, so.
So long term, yes.
Patrick, so just so it's on the, what you're going to do, because I don't understand exactly, because we didn't have a lot of conversation. You bought it because it is certified by the health department, right? And that helps you with your kitchen.
So I think actually talking a little bit about why we chose that spot would be useful. So when I opened 734 Brewing Company, we did everything wrong from a financial standpoint. We picked a building that needed to be a change of use, which meant that everything had to be brought up to modern code. That meant new HVAC, new electrical, new plumbing, new everything. And that was terribly expensive and was pretty close to ending the company just because we had made that mistake. So when I set out to find this place, I knew that there were certain things that wouldn't trigger a change in use. So I knew that having a food service place put us we were in the same category because we are also a food service. And being that lateral movement between two similar uses, or two, they're in the same category under the Michigan Building Code. That meant that we could get open for way less money, which is useful for a business. And so we said, well, we want to be in the township. So we started looking for places that had been food places that were vacant, obviously.
So are you going to serve food, or is it just so you can, are you brewing mead? I don't even know if that's the right word.
So the reason I bring up the food thing is because food, as far as the health department or as far as DEQ is concerned, mead, wine, all that stuff is just food.
Okay.
So that's why when I say food licensed, any sort of food, it could have been a chicken place, it could have been pizza, which it was, mead.
You're drinking food.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
right, liquid food. Yeah.
So you will
So we're not
make your
serving
food, or make your liquid food.
Yes.
Yeah, you'd make, and you wouldn't package it there, you would
Well,
just.
it'll be in bottles, yeah. We'll package it in bottles.
Okay, and then
Some of it will be in bottles, some of it will be in kegs.
is it dispensed like beer as well, like?
Some of it is, some of it is poured out of the bottle.
Okay, and in the seating, there was no seating on your site plan, so I was really confused on, you gotta, well, I guess you don't have to sit to drink, but I was.
Well, so it's mainly meant right now to be a tasting room. There's basically a standing counter. We could add chairs at some point. But really, we're just trying to get the company off the ground so people can come in, try a sample, hopefully buy a bottle or two, and then take off. And then as we grow, the hope is to, like phase 2 basically would be to add a second bathroom, which would allow us to have more, that opens us up to, I think it's up to 50 occupants based on, depending on square footage. So, and depending on parking requirements. So there are a million little requirements, but like the plan is to eventually grow, and there are different ways to do that, but we have to get open before we can grow.
So is this related to 734, or is it the same?
Only in the fact that I am an owner of both.
So it's not
So no.
the same brew, is that what you call it?
No. We have different recipes.
Okay. So this one is just going to be
Just
a
wine
special
and-
honey.
Yeah, we have mostly honey. We'll do some cider too, and some regular wine.
And so when you make it, what is that process? You just,
Usually you just put the ingredients in with the right amount of water and sugar. So you have fruit, honey, fruit juice, and then yeast. And then you let it sit for a few months, and then you drink it.
Madam Chair.
yes.
It was my understanding that if you had chairs in I think your sipping room or your serving room is what, 150 square foot roughly?
I'm not sure.
I believe that's close, but it was my understanding that if you had chairs in there, your capacity was reduced rather than being able to have 13 people total minus and plus your 2, because your capacity was for 15 people.
Yeah,
Nine or 10 in the serving room and 1 or 2 in the front store purchasing.
In this small concentration, and this is according to the architect, not according to me, the presence of furniture does not affect the occupancy. The limiting factor on occupancy here was the one bathroom that we have. Because there's only one bathroom, the most people we can have is 15. And that's why we had to build like an extra half wall to sort of, or like a sideways wall, or we're going to have to build that wall, to show the customer that the room is smaller in order to keep, we had to make sure we kept the room small enough so that it was the right amount of square footage per person, whether chairs or not.
But if you add chairs, then
No.
you have to make, if you do, you can have chairs. I don't
Yeah,
know.
I know, yeah. Because the chairs don't affect the occupancy.
You just have to have accessibility chairs that,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I
Everyone
mean, that's a given, yeah. The reason that chairs become a factor are usually in larger settings. Like here, because it's fixed seating, there are special rules as to how many people can sit in a certain area and how far apart the aisles have to be and how many exits and stuff like that. But with such a small, I mean, we could get really, really technical with this, but with such a small location, the presence of chairs, especially non-fixed seating,
right.
has no bearing on the occupancy.
It just triggers that you have accessible seating.
I mean, not according to law, according to ethics, sure. According to code, there's nothing that says I have to have, I mean, I don't know exactly what accessible seating is.
Well, there's a code for it, that, you know,
For an accessible
so many
chair?
for every square foot.
Oh, you mean in terms
You know,
of,
you can have
like a
so many
seating
people.
area? Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
that's
the
fine.
seating.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, on your site plan, I don't know if I know your architect probably did it for you, but in one of the comments on it that there's no seating shown on the site plan right now, but if seating is provided, barrier-free access must be provided.
Yeah, that's on there.
Pardon me?
Yeah, we are aware.
Okay.
Well, I also noticed right after that, it asked us to have a notarized statement that we're going to keep to our capacity number. I was wondering if that is a normal thing to ask for a notarized statement with building plans? Because I've never seen that before in many, many, many building plans I've had to do.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I don't know, but I think that was a way to guarantee that you don't go over the capacity, the number of 15, because you don't have enough parking spots for more than
It
that.
seems extra to me, but that's fine. We'll do it.
I can
I
find
guess.
out why.
Yeah, I would love to know why, because it seems like they're asking us to do an extra thing for no real reason. It's kind of like saying, I swear that I'm not going to break the law. That seems I mean, isn't that sort of a given?
Mike,
right.
did you want to, Mike Radzik might be able to I'm not sure, I don't know the answer, but I think actually they were trying to help you, and one way to do that is to guarantee, because we have one Elks Club that has way over capacity, and they go into the neighborhoods, and it's causing a lot of neighborhood issues. So we need to make sure that you limit.
So did they
to
sign
50.
something, or? Did they sign something saying?
Probably not.
I don't
So, yeah,
know.
it seems kind of unfair, like, what did we do to
Sorry.
deserve distrust, you know?
I'm not sure, Mike, maybe you can help with that? I don't know why.
I'm not a building official, but I did speak extensively with Dave Bellers, who is our chief building official, about this issue. He said he wanted the notarized statement of compliance because under the building code, the tasting room area, just by area alone, could accommodate more than 15 people under the building code. And so he wanted, if they're going to set an artificially low occupant limit, out of the desire to avoid the barrier-free upgrade triggers for now at least, he would like something notarized from the proprietor guaranteeing that they'll abide by that.
And I'm not sure, Michael, maybe, I've read so many documents, I think if you go above 15, you have to put in 2 bathrooms.
Yeah, that's.
Okay,
that's
so
good.
that's why you have to guarantee that there's only 15 people in there, because if not, you'll have to put in 2
Right. And Dave,
bathrooms, and it has to be,
We're aware.
Yeah,
does that make sense?
yeah, sure.
I believe they've said that that tasting room space, just by square footage alone, could accommodate 30 under the building code. But if it's going to be reduced down to just 15 for the purposes of avoiding those barrier-free requirements, he wanted something notarized from the proprietor guaranteeing compliance with that.
So,
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
yes.
But even, I kind of think even if you added a bathroom and didn't touch the old one, so, because if you touch the old one, I think you have to then upgrade that one. But even if you add a bathroom, I believe the number is probably 22, because you don't have the parking for more than the 22, is my understanding. I think you
Yeah,
got.
and that's fine.
Yeah. Well, it's not fine. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
that,
yeah.
unless you build an additional parking lot.
Right, I mean,
We
we're.
need to start the regular
Oh,
meeting.
sure.
I am really sorry, but we're a couple minutes over the regular. Are you guys okay, or did you want a,
It's first on the
Yes.
agenda.
yeah. Are you guys okay, or does anyone need a break? Jimmy? Okay. Huh?
So the work session is ending at 7:03.